Scooby Dooby Doo, a cartoon about a quirky gang of investigators made by Hanna-Barbera that have traveled far and wide to solve strange supernatural looking mysteries alongside a talking dog that no one seems to bring up for some reason. Right, this video is gonna have audience laugh tracks in it because it's supposed to reflect the earlier Scooby Doo shows. I'm getting flashbacks to the B-movie game review. Anyway, this lovable group of characters and their countless versions of them have managed to entertain many different people. Whether it be young or old, adding or taking away, cartoons or film specials, animated or live action, Scooby Doo has kept the interest of viewers, for better or worse, for the last 50 years, and is still going strong today. And speaking of which, Scoob looks really good and I can't wait to watch that. There is one media I haven't mentioned with Scooby Doo yet though, and that's video games. Games for Scooby Doo has actually been around since the 80s, but they definitely got a lot more popular in the 2000s. So why not go back to the most recently released Scooby Doo game, which was back in 2010. Huh, what a way to end a decade. I wonder why there haven't been any more games since then. Well, I guess I can try and figure that out now, as I'm going to be looking at Scooby Doo and the Spooky Swamp, the last released Scooby Doo game. At the time of this video. Who knows, another one could release and make me eat my words. Mystery Incorporated are hanging out in the swamp for some reason, when Scooby and Shaggy pick up on a mysterious scent and go after it because food. It also smells like everything at once, which honestly sounds—
You're right, Scoob! It smells like hot dogs! With onions and fudge sauce!
disgusting. Anyway, following the delicious smell, their words not mine, they stumble upon a stew being made by a woman named Lillard, who's apparently making the stew for them. Scooby and Shaggy want to eat it because food. However, it's missing some ingredients. She needs Shaggy and Scooby to get the ingredients, as she says she can never leave the swamp. However, she doesn't want the others to know anything about this. To get the ingredients, they'll have to go to El Moncho, a southwestern ghost town in Howling Peaks, a snow village with a ski resort. Now, with those being far away, they conveniently are asked by Constantine and Anna Blake to come to these locations. During that time, she directs Scooby and Shaggy on where to go, but what would a Scooby-Doo game, or any kind of media, be without some mysteries? So within these two areas, strange things happen. The El Scariachi in El Moncho, and a Yeti in the Howling Peaks. The gang ends up solving these mysteries while Scooby and Shaggy secretly obtain the ingredients needed for the stew. Fred, Velma, and Daphne catch on to this since Scooby and Shaggy weren't exactly stealthy about it. They all go back to Leela and give her the final ingredient when an alligator attacks. They manage to deal with it somehow, and discover that Leela has been spying on them for a while and fake the invitations for where they needed to go. The reason why is because she needed to make food that she could take with her for Suji, her pet alligator that just attacked us, so that they could go together. After the situation has been dealt with, she is able to leave and gives the gang some of the food, since there's a lot of it. Now, most of the game takes place in El Moncho and the Howling Peaks, which is odd given that this game is named after, you know, the swamp. I do really wish more time was dedicated to the swamp specifically rather than the other areas, because even though the story was overall connected, it still didn't feel like that for a lot of the game, since both of the other places had their own big mystery within it that had no connection to the events of the swamp. Yes, Leela led them to the locations, but the mysteries happening was conveniently there as well. They also ended up being more interesting than the mystery with the swamp. Something I do like though is that Constantine and Anna Blake are included in this game, as they were characters within First Frights, the Scooby game before this one. Yeah, this game is actually a sequel, believe it or not. Regardless, the main event ended up being more disappointing to me than the events that it was connected to. And considering that that's supposed to be the main point of the story, it's very upsetting. Scooby Doo has had many art styles over the years, and this game is no exception to that. It uses an art style completely different from other already existing styles. I can't really give this game the credit for that though, since again, First Frights did it first. The problem is I'm reviewing this one first, so yeah. Every character from Mystery Inc. to the supporting characters within the mystery cases all look pretty good, and environments are sometimes a sight to see. They give a ghost town and a snowy mountain unique features to help them from being incredibly generic. The writing for the characters were also very fitting among the main cast, giving each character the familiar personalities that people love them for, as well as general cheesy lines. Every supporting character also has unique quirks given to them, making all of them stand out among each other, just like any other Scooby Doo material would. One thing that does bring this game down a bit though is the use of a laugh track. Now again, this isn't the first Scooby Doo game to do it, but thankfully First Fright is not getting that reward either. In fact, this game is actually the 5th one to do it. So yeah, it's a trend that the Scooby Doo games have. However, I personally don't like it in this game because it either doesn't feel well timed or the joke it's used with is really bad. Yes, humor is subjective, yada yada yada. I don't like it, and if you have a problem with it, this is a review. What are you expecting from me? There can also be decently long gameplay segments that go on without one due to them not sometimes going with moments that feel like they should.
Do not give up on me. I've never been so close.
To a stew?
To releasing the darkness in my heart that keeps me trapped.
Thankfully though, you can turn this off so you don't have to deal with it if you don't like it, and I'm glad the option exists. However, I had to have it on so that I could get examples that I could use. So I still have to deal with it. Something that helps the writing is the voice work. Of course, there's the usual cast, which I'll go more into in a moment, but there's also some particularly well-known actors like Cam Clark, Steve Bloom, Jim Cummings, John DiMaggio, Andre Sogliuzzo. So in terms of guest stars, the casting was great. And now we have the Mystery Inc. cast. Among Scooby Doo in general, the cast has been a little bit scattered. With a series that's been running for 50 years, that's bound to happen for one reason or another. So, I want to try and give a time frame for this, which I normally don't do for my reviews. It's also kind of because of the decade ending, but whatever. Of course, the voices that are used for this game I will talk about, but I'll give a decent amount of attention to the years 2005 through 2015, since this game lands right in the middle of that being released in 2010. Scooby and Fred are the same as they've always been, with Frank Welker voicing them both. Since they almost always have been voiced by him, there's not much else to bring up. Not that I'm complaining, it makes it easy for me, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Velma during this time was mostly done by Mindy Cohn. There was one time in 2005 where Velma was voiced by Kate Micucci, and it was her first time ever, but it would not be her last as she ended up voicing Velma from 2015 onward, exactly a decade apart, which is crazy to think about. There was one exception to this in 2013 with Stephanie D'Abruzzo, but that was just a one-time thing. Daphne is somewhat similar to Scooby and Fred, having most of her time being spent played by one actress, Grey DeLisle. By the way, I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right, I'm just going off of what Google Translate tells me. That was mainly during the time slot and afterwards though. Before 2005, Daphne's voice was jumping between 4 different people, including Grey DeLisle. One of these other people also so happened to be a mentor of Grey DeLisle. I won't go into the reason why for the change, but it's really cool seeing a student being able to pick up from their mentor. And finally Shaggy, which has some similarity to Daphne. Since 2010 and onward, Shaggy has been voiced by Matthew Lillard, but anytime before that, Shaggy was usually voiced by one of 2 other people, with very occasional Matthew Lillard appearances, with one of them being passed away at this point as well. There is one additional person who also had a one-time role as Shaggy, Scott Menville. He voices Robin in Teen Titans, that's the main reason why I wanted to bring him up. For the music, every theme has multiple versions, and that leads to, depending on how you look at it, over 100 tracks for the game. There's tracks for individual places within the 3 areas that you go to, which gives a lot of diversity even without the variations that come with them. All of these songs are quite good and fit the atmospheres they are used in very well, though there is one thing that this affects, but I'll get to that later. You are able to switch between the 5 members of the Mystery Gang as you go through El Muncho, the Howling Peaks, and the Spooky Swamp to solve mysteries and beat or run from various enemies. Scooby, Fred, and Daphne have a physical attack while Shaggy and Velma have a projectile. Everyone plays mostly the same, being able to pick up and throw objects, use levers, and various objects that are collected throughout the game. Each member does have a special ability. Scooby can go through doors that have his symbol on them. Shaggy has a rope, I believe, though I want to call it a grappling hook to be funny. Anyways, he can use whatever this is to swing across gaps and into some areas that others might not be able to access. Velma is able to use machinery to open up areas for the gang. Daphne has special agility, allowing her to climb up things like pipes. Fred's physical strength gives him the ability to push and pull boxes and turn large mechanisms. There are gadgets that everyone can use. The camera lets them take pictures of clues, people, and various objects. The magnifying glass reveals hidden clues such as footprints or missing objects on the walls. The recorder is used to record conversations characters have on what looks like a cassette. Wait, it's 2010 at this point. Cassettes are dying years before this. How many kids even know what a cassette is? And yes, I actually did research on this. Cassettes were not only dying in the early 2000s, but cassette player was taken out of the Oxford Dictionary only a year after this game. I know I'm being really nitpicky about this, so I'll just move on. I'll be here all day if I keep talking about this. Now, from time to time, you'll only be able to play as Scooby and Shaggy, and during these times, you'll either be collecting pieces of paper that are combined to create some kind of image, or running away from a giant creature. All of these investigation methods, as well as talking to people, will give clues about who the culprit behind everything is. Scattered among every area are Scooby snacks that you can pick up. You can also get these by breaking objects and defeating enemies. In addition to those, there are Super Scooby snacks worth 50 regular ones, and Scooby medallions, which are way less common but are worth 500 Scooby snacks. These Scooby snacks are a currency for buying costume pieces. I don't know what places accept Scooby snacks as currency, but I guess anything can fit the bill if agreed upon. Regardless, each character gets the costume piece when it's unlocked and can be equipped at any time. Alongside the Scooby snacks, there are collectibles to get in every area. There's the costume sets, which I mentioned before, and pieces of food which combine to make a giant sandwich at the gang's makeshift house in the swamp. Then there's Scooby Doo letters, which, geez, I wonder what that spells. Defeating enemies drops a mask which Velma can study. Collecting enough of certain types will unlock a costume piece that the gang can wear. The camera is also able to take pictures of any ghosts that you spot, characters you run into, and enemies, though good luck with that last one. The enemies are trying to basically murder you after all. That laugh track was kinda dark. Let's ignore that for now. Occasionally you'll run into a moving hat, don't ask. Catching this hat reveals a frog, Philip, who gives hints, jokes, and quotes to you. Right before the reveal of the culprit, the game has you deduce, or guess if you're me and didn't pay attention to things, on who the culprit is. One thing I do have to give this game credit for is getting to feel like a part of Mystery Inc. There's enough banter between characters to still feel true to them, and the different combinations of characters give different dialogue that you'll hear, which can potentially give some funny moments. This game also feels very similar to the LEGO games in a lot of ways. I haven't reviewed the LEGO game yet, I just realized. I should do that at some point. Anyways, the main connections that I'm making are the two playable characters that you can switch between at any time, aside from particular moments. Each character has unique abilities for platforming and puzzle solving, and there's a large amount of collectibles, some of which you can only get later on. It all has a sense of familiarity that I like. And this is also the second game in a row that I've done that with. Odd. You know, despite all of the wackiness that Scooby Doo has, I didn't think that taking part in said wackiness could be so boring. Fighting enemies is incredibly repetitive, as well as obtaining masks, since some enemy types require more than 50, and some require over 100 masks. Using a magnifying glass was basically just wave the remote around until something registers, walk forward a bit, and rinse and repeat until the game says to stop. Walking around everywhere with no kind of fast travel, especially with the music that played most of the time, was sleep-inducing. Again, the music is good, but when you link that together with the boring gameplay, and you might find yourself falling asleep from time to time. The amount of times I almost fell asleep while recording this game is astounding. This game is also 5 hours. I almost fell asleep multiple times for 5 hours. That's not good. There's no punishment for guessing wrong when it comes to guessing who the culprit is. This is odd but understandable since the mystery gang usually don't get their guesses wrong, like, ever. So punishing the player for guessing incorrectly doesn't make sense to do. But at the same time, I also don't think there's any bonus for getting the answer correct either. So why bother giving us the ability to guess before the reveal if we can't get it wrong anyways? Also, I never really tried to figure out the criminal when watching Scooby Doo. I barely paid attention to vital clues and just said a random name at the end and hoped I was right. I guess the no wrong answers thing is pretty realistic in that regard, but giving a choice with no reward or punishment is just strange to me. Also, anytime there's a mandatory costume change, the costume that you already had set will have to be set again later. Now, I understand why this is a thing, so that the characters doesn't look really weird, unfitting, or honestly funny in certain situations. It's mainly an inconvenience, so I don't mind it. This was definitely one of the strangest experiences I've had. There wasn't really much good or bad to say about this game. I really talked more about the facts surrounding this game in terms of its story and presentation more than the gameplay itself. It was incredibly down the middle aside from one thing, the fact that the game bored me. I've been disappointed by some games that I've reviewed, others have made me angry, incredibly angry as a matter of fact, but none of them have managed to bore me, at least not to the extent that this game has. Now, I can easily see people enjoying this to the best of their ability, but for me, this ended up being a boring chore to get through, which to me, honestly feels worse than being disappointed or angry. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. So, it's been about 2 months since I've uploaded my last video, and that's for a variety of things. One, I mainly got an upgrade to my computer. You guys may or may not have noticed that, but regardless, we got a new upgrade to the computer, and that took a little bit of time. I was also ending finals about half a month earlier, so there's that as well. And then the holidays happened, which, speaking of, happy holidays to everyone that celebrated. I was busy then, having to hang out with family and all that, so I spent time with them, and it was very enjoyable. But regardless, it's now the end of a decade, which, yeah, that's very much surprising. And this will be the last review video that I do for this decade and year, as a matter of fact. I'll have to make a lot more videos in 2020 to reflect on 2019, but that'll be for the future. But for those of you who have been waiting so long for me to do another video, thank you guys so much for being patient with me, and I'll try my best to make sure that 2020 does not end up being this bad, because when it came to the last third or fourth of this year, reviews have been very difficult to get out, I'll just say that, but I'm managing now, and 2020 I hope will be a lot better, especially towards the end of the year. But all of you have been very understanding about everything that has happened, so thank you guys very much for that. But anyways, if you have not already, make sure you go down into the description because that's where all of my social medias are located. My Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Discord are all down there, and there are all ways of making sure of whenever I upload another video or have an update for the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, as well as share this video out with your friends and family. And until the next video in 2020, take care.